Howdy, and welcome to LeeReads, where I talk about the books I've been reading and enjoying lately. I took a brief summer break, but now I'm back with my approximately Q2 book haul. These are the physical books that I have picked up since about March, which is when I did my last little haul. I want to start with some newer releases, then some books that I might have already talked about on the channel, and then we'll get into some of my finds from the secondhand bookstore, Half Price Books. First book I'd like to mention is one that my husband and I have been listening together on audiobook, so it's taking me a lot longer to read than normally. Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman, which is the first book in this series that was originally independently published and then was picked up by traditional publishing. It is about a man and his kind of pet cat who gets sucked into a lethal dungeon, like in the center of the earth when aliens invade. Most everything is destroyed, but anyone who is outside gets transported to this dungeon, and now they basically have to keep fighting to live. It's funny to me that this book has been presented as humorous, and it really is, but it also is quite dark. So be forewarned if you're going to pick this up. Yes, it's kind of heavy and dark, but there's a humorous slant to it, and as someone who does enjoy various role-playing games, I've gotten a lot of humor out of this. I'm excited to see how it ends. We're only a couple hours from the ending. Most likely I'll be continuing on with the series. But I do recommend the audio version. I think the effects that are used really help to increase the experience. I picked up the second book in another series that's been talked about a lot on BookTube lately, which is The Howling Dark. I read Empire of Silence, the first book, a couple of months ago. I was very intrigued. I liked the world building, the references to Dune, the mission that the character is on. It's one of those where the main character is telling you about his past, and he is considered this villain that destroyed an entire species. Now he's telling you how that came about. So the first book was very much kind of setting up who he was, where he came from, what his motivations are. The Howling Dark, I've started the beginning, and there's a time skip. So this is one that I'm hoping to read before the end of the year. I'm not going to be caught up by the time the last book in the series comes out. I've accepted that, but as long as I'm still enjoying them, I'm going to keep plugging away at the series. A quite new release, this came out only a week or two ago, Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. I collect her books because I love her books. The books of The World of the White Rat, which are her mostly independently published fantasy romance books, are my favorite, but I really love her twists on fairy tales. This is apparently a fairy tale retelling of Snow White, but I'm sure it's going to have the signature darkness and humor that T. Kingfisher usually brings to her stories. Another book that was first brought to my attention by Angela at Literature Science Alliance is The Incandescent by Emily Tesh, which is like adult version of Magical Boarding School because the main character is a professor there. So it's following this very powerful magician who's returned to her alma mater to teach. And not only is it dealing with those interrelationships with her colleagues and the students, but then there's this old smart demon that rears its head that she has to deal with. And it just sounds so interesting and different. And look, the cover is just gorgeous with that bird, some type of bird on the cover. I have grown to be very leery of books that are marketed as romantasy, but there are still some that I'm willing to try. So I have picked up The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy, which I read last month and I've already talked to y'all about. Rose in Chains was originally fic and now has been adapted. I'm just really curious to see how successful that was. And I like to support authors that have been in fandom, especially as they endeavor to move into publishing their original stuff. A couple books that came out within the last few months that I picked up right away and read, and I've already discussed, are The Witch Roads by Kate Elliott, and the sequel to this duology comes out in a couple months, and The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson, which really took me by surprise. This is one of the favorite books that I've read so far this year. It's also the first book in a series. I don't know when the next one's coming out, but I loved that even though this was an epic fantasy, it really still had great humor and it didn't take itself too seriously, but it took itself seriously enough. I really recommend this. I picked up the first two books in the Parasol Protectorate series, Soulless and Changeless. It's an urban fantasy set in London in the mid to late 1800s, I think. I heard good things about these books. I so loved the Veronica Speedwell mystery series that's set in a similar time that I was really intrigued to pick up and to see an urban fantasy take on a similar setting. Is that the main character has no soul, so I wonder if that's some sort of if she's some sort of creature or why she's soulless. I'm not sure. That's the name of the book. She is attacked by and accidentally kills this vampire, and then when others start going missing, people think that she's responsible, and she gets kind of thrust into that adventure. So book 1 and 2, if I enjoy them, I'll continue on. This one I picked up simply by the name of the book, A College of Magics, and then I really liked what was on the cover. This was published back in 1994. The only thing I know about it is what I read on the back cover. Ferris is the heir to a small northern dukedom, and right now her uncle or another family member is kind of controlling that dukedom and wants to get her out of the way and sends her off to this college. Little does he know that the specialty taught at this college is magic, and Ferris has an apt hand indeed. And last, I have been dabbling a little bit more in reading some historical romance. This author, Georgette Heyer, published a lot in that space. The writing isn't exactly modern, but apparently it's fairly foundational for modern historical romance, and A Convenient Marriage was recommended. The main character's sister is proposed to by this earl. The main character volunteers to marry him instead to save her sister for whatever reason, and I guess romance and hijinks ensue. My understanding of these authors' works is that they do kind of poke at the social norms, and they're pretty funny in the process, so I'm hoping that I enjoy this. And that is the majority of the physical books I've picked up since March. If there's anything else, I'm not seeing it on my shelf, so I might have already unhauled it. My shelves were due for a little bit of a tidy up, a reorganization, so I thought I would share them with you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, don't forget to support your local library. Thanks.